بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Second one, for love of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam. صلوات على محمد. صلى على محمد. And your third salawat to hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I know you're all tired, these fasts are very long, but your salawat is what's going to tell me that we are making progress. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This blessed month that we have, one of the key factors that we have in this month is that Allah has opened the doors of mercy for us. And He has opened the doors of growth and development in this month. And one of those key ways of growth and development is thought, and to think about Islam, and to think about Allah's creation, and to find within Allah's creation the signs of His presence. He's mentioned that this Tafakur, ahsanul ibadah huwa tafaqqu fi ad-din. The best of worship is to have pondering, thought about your faith. And inshallah, over the next few nights that I'm here, inshallah, we will be going over topics that are associated with our thought, and to think about Islam, and to think about our faith. Now, what does that mean? I guess I have to answer the question, huh? It means that when we think about our faith, the fundamentals of our faith that are essential for us to have are around the usul ad-din. Tawheed, adal, nabuwat, imamat, qayamat. If we were to even simplify it, tawheed, nabuwat, and qayamat. That if we understand these concepts, if we understand these thought processes and what is the fundamental behind these concepts, we have built a relationship with our faith, and we have an understanding of what Allah has put us on this earth for. Yani when we take a look at it, we see that when we take a look at Islam and the structure of Islam, and we put the whole religion of Islam in the form of a tree, when it comes to the visible aspects of the tree, the branches which are known as furu' ad-din, the branches of religion, the actions of religion, the manifestations of faith, right? The visible factors. When we want to recognize someone's faith, we look at how they behave. A Christian, we may see wears a cross. We may see that he prays in a church. We may see that he has certain characteristics. He turns the other cheek. A Jewish person, he has physical manifestations of his faith. On Friday afternoon, he doesn't work. On Saturdays, he does not turn on the electricity in his house. He wears a certain type of beard. He wears a certain type of hat. There's physical manifestations of his faith. The physical manifestations of our faith are salat, saum, hajj, zakat. Or just say Urdu mein padhate hain, namaz, roza, hajj, zakat. Meaning that these aspects are the physical manifestation, they are the apparent nature. When it comes to the apparent nature of our faith, we have permission to do emulation or to follow the example of a learned scholar. So meaning if we're not certain how to pray, we can look at the example of someone else who knows how to pray and learn this example. If we don't know the rules of fasting, we can ask someone, and however he explains it to us, we can accept the rules of fasting and we can fast. Same with Hajj, same with Zakat. As a matter of fact, with Hajj, it's famous that you have to take someone who has done it before to teach you. It's famous that it's a saying that even if a mujtahid, a maraji' who wrote the rules of Hajj, went for Hajj the first time, he would have to follow someone else to ensure that he fulfilled the rites of Hajj correctly. You need a physical example, or it helps to have a physical example to learn about these aspects of our faith. However, when it comes to the fundamentals of our faith, when it comes to Tawheed, when it comes to Nabuwwat, when it comes to Qiyamat, we can't follow these concepts or believe in these concepts because somebody told us to. Come tomorrow, inshallah, when we enter our graves, I say inshallah because this is reality, this is truth. When we enter our graves and Munkar and Nakir come and they ask us questions about our life, when they ask us questions about our faith, and when they ask us the first question about our faith, who is your Lord? You can't say, my mother told me my Lord is Allah, so therefore that's my answer to you. No. At that instance, those words don't come to your tongue unless you have faith in them, you understand them yourself. So for us, when we say things like God is one, Allah is one, here are the sifat of Allah that we know of, sifat thabutiyya, sifat salbiyya. The proven attributes that are the foundation of Allah, and here are the attributes that are absent from Allah. When we talk about these concepts, we have to understand them. And we have to be able to articulate them to ourselves, because that is the true aspect of this side of faith. For example, you have a conversation, someone comes to you today, forget someone else, your children come to you and they say to you, Baba, why do we say that God is one? How come there can't be two gods? How do you present the conversation? How do you discuss with your child? How do you educate them? How do you present the concept that why was a prophet sent? Why is there not a prophet now? Why is it that God doesn't have a body? Why can't we see God? See, these questions, these aspects of aqaid we take for granted because alhamdulillah, many of us were blessed to be born into the faith of Islam. And we inherited Islam, which is a good thing. And even this aspect is very important and critical when you think about it. When you think about it and you look back on the history of your ancestry, someone somewhere made a decision amongst your ancestors that this Islam is the truth. And they made sacrifices. The same way today when we see someone accept Islam, we see them making sacrifices. They turn away from their family sometimes. They turn away from the lifestyle they were raised in. They turn away from all the aspects of society they know because they accept the fact that this Islam is the truth. That this Islam is the right guidance. And in our families, in our histories, every single one of us, somewhere in our family, someone made the decision that yes, this Islam is the truth. And when they made that decision, they made a series of sacrifices in their life. They made a series of changes. And they protected this faith to give it to you as an inheritance. They made a decision that they are going to purify this faith. They are going to enact and emulate on this faith to the best of their ability to give their children an inheritance. And each generation successively improved on that process. If you take a look and see, someone who is born a Muslim and raised in a Muslim household, his traditions are associated with Islam. His house is one that is associated with Islam. In his house, he has a place that is anointed for prayer. And even this aspect of having a place that's anointed in your house for prayer is very important, it's very critical. One of the aspects when we talk about death, and death is very important, we will continuously inshallah mention it. When we talk about death, one of the things that happens sometimes is that it's very difficult for the soul to leave the body, or when this process begins. One of the things that facilitates the soul leaving the body when you're in that process and when you're in that state of difficulty is to be put in the condition of muhtadar, waiting for death, on the place where you pray. Meaning you should have a place in your house that's anointed and specific for prayer where you pray, where you consistently bring up prayer and where your habit is to pray, so that on that day when that time comes inshallah and we're in our houses and we're not in a poor condition, we can be laid in this location to help facilitate our death. But these traditions, these aspects are things that we've inherited. They are things that we learned because our families had this. And it becomes our job then to give our children a good inheritance. Many of our families, we came to this country, and we came into this country because we saw that the opportunity in this country was better. We saw that the ability to give our children and our families a good lifestyle was better. We saw that the advancements in technology and science were better, so we came to this country. We came to this land, and we decided we're going to raise our families here to give them a good future. That good future doesn't just count on the technology you can give them. That good future is just not about the size of the house you can leave them. That good future is not just about the iPads you can buy them. These material things, they come and they go. One day you have it, tomorrow it breaks, tomorrow it's stolen, tomorrow it's gone. What remains and what is the best of inheritance is that akhlaq, is that character, is that tarbiyah that we give our children. And to be able to give them that tarbiyah, we have to be able to answer these questions about faith. So that when our children ask, and if they don't ask, we ask them. We discuss it with them. So that we know that they cannot become confused by the environment that they live in. We know that we have strengthened their faith, that they accept the ideology and the concepts of Islam and they internalize them and they make them a part of their personality. This is why we have to address some of these concepts. We have to address, why is it that we can't see Allah? Why is it that Allah doesn't have a body? Why is it that one prophet was sent? Why is it that this was the best of prophets? Why is it that there are bad things that happen to good people in this world? Why is it that we have maraja? Why must we do taqleed? Why must we have imams? Why couldn't the people select the imam? What is the position of an imam in society? What is the imam's right over me today in society? What is my responsibility, my obligation? These things inherently, because we have inherited our faith, we believe them, we follow them. Yani if someone was to ask you, can you see Allah? You would say, no, you can't see Allah. Come on, what are you, crazy? But he asks you, why? Why can't you see Allah? Maybe we don't know how to articulate this answer. And we need to learn how to articulate this answer. And we need to learn how to have these conversations and prepare ourselves so that we can answer these questions, so that our children are better prepared. We leave a good inheritance for our children to come. That this aspect of our faith is cemented. This aqaid, these fundamentals of faith, we have to utilize our intellect, we have to struggle with our minds. But there is the right struggle and there is the incorrect struggle. And this becomes very interesting. Because, recite a salawat please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Again, I'm going to count on your salawat again to make sure that you're all awake and you're with me. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Within man, there exist multiple faculties. And the most dangerous of the faculties that exist within a man is his imagination. And by man, I mean insan, not specifically men alone. Women have it too. If some men can swear that women have a worse imagination than men. No offense to anyone. But this aspect of imagination is difficult. It's dangerous. Because sometimes when our thoughts aren't guided and we don't know the correct way to approach a topic, we can come up with false answers. We can come up with misguidances. Instead of guiding someone, we show them the wrong way. Because we think, okay, my intellect is sufficient. My aql is sufficient to come up with an answer to answer this question. And we rotate words, we spin words, we spin words, we spin words, and we say, there's your answer. In English they have a saying, after you say something that's really long and lengthy, you say, and Bob's your uncle. And you're done. But we can't do this. There's a structured thought process. There's a way to approach this. The most apparent example of this is when Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was in the city of Kufa. A man came to him and he said to him, Ya Ali ibn Abi Talib, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, describe to me Allah in such a way that it is as if I have seen Him myself. Describe Him to me as if I've seen Him. His point in asking the question, we all understand. He wants to have ma'rifah. He wants to have understanding of Allah. Yet when we take a look at the narration, we see that Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, who is narrating the story, he says that when this man asked this question to my grandfather, Imam Ali became so upset that his face became bright red with anger. And he demanded that all of the people gather in Masjid Kufa. He says that over 4,000 people gathered in Masjid Kufa to see the answer of Imam Ali alayhi salam, and he started to give his khutbah in such a phase that his face was still red from anger. And then Imam begins his speech, and this is the khutbah in Nahj al-Balagha. You can read this khutbah, I believe it is the 89th khutbah in Nahj al-Balagha, where he talks about this. It is known as the khutbah of the skeletons. And Imam Ali talks about the creation of the earth and the fundamentals of how the universe was raised. This is why it's called the khutbah of the skeletons, of how the universe was created. And he answers this individual. He says, "O person, you did not ask me this question except that your imagination prompted this question from you. You did not ask me this question except that there was something wrong within your mentality that you would imagine that you could see Allah." The intellectual person is one who recognizes the limits of his intellect and recognizes that he does not have the ability to fathom the greatness and superiority of Allah. And his intellect, he stops at the boundary of where he is capable of understanding and he leaves it. Yani, again, for us, if we were to leave it to our own intellect, we would look at this individual's question and we would say, well, what's wrong with that? He wants an understanding of Allah, he asked in the ways that he understands. He brought the question in a format which is easy for him to comprehend. But we take a look and we see that one who has the guidance, one who can teach us the way in how to approach the questions of Tawheed, is showing us that this idea that you should ever be able to imagine what Allah looks like is incorrect. Becomes a very interesting point. It becomes a very interesting structure. I think my phone is doing it. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So when we take a look at this aspect, we see that there are some questions, there are some structures in how these questions need to be answered in some formats that we have to learn. We have to learn the track in which we should approach these questions so that we don't get carried away. And we see that in some personalities within Islam have gotten carried away. When we take a look at, for example, the narrations of Abu Hurairah, we see that Abu Hurairah in some instances he narrates that Allah will sit on his throne in such and such format, and when he will sit, the throne will groan, and this is an actual narration, it's a true narration, you can read this narration from him. He says, and then on that day of Qiyamah, on the day of judgment, the hellfire will be difficult to control, and Allah will tell the hellfire to calm down, and the hellfire will refuse to calm down until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts his leg into the hellfire. And then he will say to the hellfire, are you satisfied now? And the hellfire will be satisfied. This is the way the imagination can get carried away. And yes, that's an extreme example. Inshallah, may we never be amongst the muqallideen of Abu Hurairah. Ameen. However, we can still get confused. We still can get confused, and that's where we have to start researching and learning about these ideas and thinking about them. This is why we see that Imam Hassan alayhi salam says, صل على أوصيكم بتقوى الله وإدامة التفكر فإن التفكر أبوه لكل خير وأمه أيضا. Imam Hassan alayhi salam says, I advise you, I give you my nasihat, that to have piety of Allah, to have fear of Allah, and to always be thinking, because thought and the pondering is the father of every good thing. Abu li kulli khair is the father of every good thing. Wa ummuhu, and the mother of every good thing. Yani all of the goodness that we wish to achieve comes from the idea of thoughtfulness and to think about Islam and to be aware of Islam and to think about these fundamentals and have a deep understanding of them. And there's no problem with that. There's not an age restriction on this, that after a certain age you stop thinking, you say, Bas, I know Allah at this age, there's no problem with me thinking about it. Bas, I've come to the satisfaction, I have understood Allah completely, I know exactly what He is, and we're good to go. As a matter of fact, Alama Majlisi narrates, he says amongst the Sufis they have this concept. Alama Majlisi says, I saw a group of Sufis who had come from Turkey, and they came to the ziyarat of Abu Bilal Hussain alayhi salam. He says, as I saw them, the time for prayer came, and I saw that all of them came and they went and they prayed. Now in that age, similar to this age, it's sometimes you don't see these people very often. You don't see people of different sects or different thought processes mixing in. But when you go to ziyarat or when you go to hajj, you see people of all different colors and all different shapes. And that's one of the barakat of this hajj and this ziyarat. So he says, I saw all of them go to pray, except one. This one among them, he just sat against the wall with a dazed look in his eyes as if he was lost to the world. When we had finished praying and they had finished praying, I went to them and I said, I noticed that all of you came to pray except him. Why didn't he come to pray? They replied, oh, him. He has become one with Allah. He doesn't need to pray anymore. He has become one with Allah. He doesn't. Yani amongst the Sufi, they've come to this idea that everything, wahdatul wujud, the oneness of Allah, has incorporated within this concept that we as well are a part of Allah. Astaghfirullah. See, here's the confusion. I say because Allah created everything, everything is a part of Allah. And since everything is a part of Allah, after you've come to a certain level of realization, a certain age, you just become a part of Allah. You don't need to pray anymore because the purpose of prayer is to recognize Allah. And once you recognize Allah, what's the point of prayer? Look at the confusion. Look at how the track has gotten lost. Look at how the thought process has taken them away from guidance and away from ma'rifat of Allah to a completely different concept where they've lost every aspect of recognition of Allah. The same way with Anbiya, the same way with the Ahlul Bayt, where people come and they make these claims or they don't understand what is the correct value and the position of the Ahlul Bayt. And then they make accusations against us. And they make accusations that sometimes our people don't know how to answer. For example, when the accusation comes against us that we claim that Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib is higher than Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ma salla ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The accusation is completely invalid. How do we answer it? How do we structure it? How do we present a very logical and consequential structure to the argument that proves that no, we don't hold this belief? And it validates us in our own hearts that when we come to the majlis, sometimes we come to the majlis and the khatib or the alim, he is extolling the praise of Amir al-Mu'mineen, which is very good. But then they don't mention the Prophet. So sometimes the listeners, especially amongst our youth, they get confused. Say, maybe it's true. Maybe Amir al-Mu'mineen is greater than the Prophet. And what's wrong with that? You see, the imagination takes over. And what's wrong with that? There is something wrong with that. And we have to correct these aspects. And we have to think about them. And we have to discuss them. This is why the presence of scholarship is very important amongst our communities. And we have to raise from amongst our communities people who understand our questions, who understand our problems, and who answer our questions and our problems according to the times that we live in. The same way we invest in raising our own doctors and our own engineers and our own lawyers, we have to invest in our own scholars who know our society and know the problems that our society faces, know the problems that our generations face and help correct them. So inshallah tonight we'll start with one question which originates from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. When Amir al-Mu'mineen says, وَيْلَكَ مَا كُنْتُ عَبْدٌ لَمْ أَرَاهُ. How is it possible that I should be the worshipper, the abid, the servant of one who I haven't seen? So then what does this mean? If Amir al-Mu'mineen is extolling us the fact that you can see Allah, and how is it possible for me, Ali ibn Abi Talib, to be one who worships someone who he hasn't seen? What does this mean? What does it mean when we talk about the idea of seeing Allah? When we look at the Quran, we see that it is definite that we can't see Allah with our own eyes, because Allah says in the Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, لا تدركه الأبصار وهو يدرك الأبصار. The eyes cannot see Him, but He is aware of all the eyes. He's telling you the eyes can't see Him. So why does Amir al-Mu'mineen say that my eyes have seen Him? How could I worship someone who I haven't seen? When we take a look at the story of Nabi Musa alayhi salam in the Quran, where it goes, وَلَمَّا جَاءَ مُوسَى لِمِيقَاتِنَا وَكَلَّمَ رَبَّهُ قَالَ رَبِّي أَرِنِي أَنظُرْ إِلَيْكَ. Allah says in the Quran that when Nabi Musa came to our appointed time and our appointed place to meet us, he spoke to his Lord and he said to his Lord, he says, "Oh Lord, show me, where can I see you?" قَالَ لَن تَرَانِي وَلَكِنْ أَنظُرْ إِلَى جَبَلٍ فَإِنْ أَسْتَقَرُّ مَكَانُهُ فَسَوْفَ تَرَانِ. He says, Allah says, you will never see me. However, if look at this mountain, if this mountain remains in its place, then you can see me. فَلَمَّا تَجَلَّى رَبُّهُ لِجَبَلِ جَعْلَهُ دَكًّا. And when Allah showed upon it His power, His might, the mountain crumbled. وَخَرَّ مُوسَى صَعِقًا أَفَاقَ قَالَ سبحانك نتبع عليك وأول المؤمنين لتبت عليك عفوا. Nabi Musa, seeing that the mountain crumbled and was destroyed, he passed out from fear. When he passed out from the state of fear, when he came to, he says, "Oh Allah, I return to you, I seek repentance from you, and I am the first of the mu'mineen." Yani again, it's a proof that it's not physically possible to see Allah. If you cannot see the might and the power of Allah, how could you see Allah Himself? This aspect of sight talks about the sight. Human beings have two forms of sight. The first form of sight that each of us is aware of is the sight of our eyes. The second aspect of sight that each human being possesses is the sight of his heart. Where his heart is, it has the ability to recognize something and submit to its truthfulness, its position, its power, its status. How these two sets of eyes are different. These eyes, the eyes on our face, have the ability to make a mistake. For example, you're going in your car and you're driving down the turnpike. You're driving down, New Jersey Turnpike, and you're going at 70 miles an hour. Immediately you see a flash of white in the grass on the side. You turn and you look and you say, "Oh, that was a rabbit. I saw a rabbit." Yani the speed of your motion and what you saw in that position you thought was a rabbit. However, maybe it was just a plastic bag. Maybe it was something else, it was a piece of trash. Yani your eyes, these eyes can be mistaken. We know because people do sleights of hand and these tricks all the time where they can hide something from our eyes. However, the sight of our heart is something that can never be confused. The sight of our heart is something that submits to Allah and can recognize Him and be aware of His presence. The more we purify it, the more we focus on it. How do we focus on the sight of our heart? We focus on the sight of our heart, one, through this blessed month. Allah has said that through this month I improve the sight of your heart. Through another aspect is the recitation of Quran. The recitation of Quran in its Arabic language has certain benefits and effects on a human being that we cannot quantify. Sometimes we think that, it's sufficient if I read it in my own language, whether that's Urdu, whether that's English, because the Arabic is difficult for me. No, Allah has put a barakat in the Arabic. There is a reason why He selected the Arabic language. And He put within certain pieces that impact us and our souls and our hearts and our beliefs. And it impacts us, and that impact is on our heart. When a heart is purified, we see this conversation. A man came to our Holy Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And he said to him, in his mind he was thinking, I'm going to ask this personality such a question that it will stump him. He will be unable to answer me. And he came with this intention when he sat down, all smug and really smart and thinking, I'm going to fool this guy. Because he didn't believe in the true status of our Prophet. So he says, tell me, O Prophet of Allah, tell me about all of those things that are good to do and all of those things that are bad to do. Our Prophet answers him in a very beautiful, simple fashion. He says, all the things that are good for you are the things that your heart accepts. And all of the things that are bad for you is the one that your heart stops you and even prevents you for a second from accepting. Meaning Allah has put this natural capacity within us that within our heart we can recognize when something is good and when something is bad. We train ourselves to either enact upon this feeling within our heart or to ignore this feeling within our heart. And we know this. Each one of us knows the scale within our hearts, what is within our hearts and what we do and what we enact. And that reality that's within our hearts is the reality of the sight of the heart that acknowledges Allah. When we look at the creation, إِنَّا فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. In the creation of the heavens and the earth and the changing of the day and night are the signs for those who ponder, who think. Meaning when we look at this world, when we look at this creation, we can acknowledge and we can see the signs that Allah is present. Our heart submits to it that someone had to create this. It didn't come about on its own. This is the sight through which we recognize Allah. This is the sight that when we see His creation, when we look at the world, we cannot deny within our hearts the presence of this personality. We know and we have such acknowledgement that He is present, we can't hide that aspect. Alaykum salam. Inshallah, tomorrow night we will continue, and over the next few nights we're going to ask questions about Tawheed, about the justice of Allah, even the aspects of evolution, because they need to be discussed, and Islam discusses it, it mentions it. Islam doesn't shy away from anything. Islam is a solution for every aspect of life. There is no aspect in your life that Islam does not address. And we have to go through and we have to find these problems that exist in our society today, that maybe we know the right answer, but we don't know how to articulate the right answer. We don't know how do we present the correct answer so that our children can follow the correct path with us. The next generations can follow the correct path. They don't get confused by those people who are constantly outside and speaking their mind and opinion and speaking from their imaginations and speaking from things that they have come up with in their own heads. So inshallah, let's end our session tonight with the recitation of Dua Faraj for the hastening of the Dhuhr of Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma kun li waliyika al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan. صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقاعدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.